Banks and credit unions have a problem. Their outdated technology can't keep up. Not with the engaging experiences of big tech and challenger banks, or the speed of new fintech services. And especially not with growing customer expectations. So financial institutions can either lose their customers to better digital players, or they can upgrade. And that's where we come in. The Backbase engagement banking platform is the evolution of the digital banking experience. With the power of one platform, you can start small, then grow big across all channels and business lines. You can increase conversions during onboarding and product applications, deepen customer loyalty and engagement, partner with the finest fintechs, and above all, improve life for customers and also employees. With turnkey apps plus accelerators to build your own, the platform can be tailored to the unique needs of any sized bank or credit union, like the hundreds around the world that we're powering today. This only scratches the surface of what Backbase can do for you. To learn more or speak to us, visit backbase.com.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our first live stream here at Backbase. My name is Cornel Dixon. I look after sales in Africa, and today I'm actually joined by our CEO, Jouk Pleiter. Jouk, do you want to say hello?
Nice to meet you. My name is Jouk. Good to be here.
Perfect. So today's session, we're going to be spending about 45 minutes, plus minus, Jouk, and we're actually going to be looking at how we can improve the odds of success when it comes to digital transformation, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of talk about fintech, lots of new challengers, big tech, but I think the topic for today is really Backbase is interacting with a lot of traditional banks and also CxO level decision makers in banks. And what we see is that everybody is convinced to do the digital transformation. I think there's an abundance of evidence that it is important and strategic. But the key question is how? How to make it happen? And that's kind of the platform, this whole CxO talk, which we plan to do for a very long time into the future.
Yeah.
To basically internally share best practices, but also to invite other CxOs that are in this digital transformation journey and share their lessons learned, the good and the bad.
I think there's plenty of lessons to be had as well, right? And that's
Yeah.
the purpose of today and for the rest of the sessions that we're doing. So I think a bit of housekeeping first. Very, very important to get this in place. We're monitoring the live chat, so if you go onto our LinkedIn event page, you will find that you can post questions there directly, and myself and Jouk will jump on that and hopefully answer them in today's session. We do have Q&A time right at the end, specifically. Likewise, if you would like any of the slides, feel free to go on to marketing@backbase.com, reach out to our wonderful colleagues there, and they will be able to share it with you directly. And if you want to have a follow-up on any of the well, hopefully very interesting topics we're going to cover today, Jouk.
Sure.
They can contact us at contact@backbase.com. Nice and simple.
Makes sense.
Nice and simple.
Right.
Let's begin.
Yeah, let's dive in. I think this is a beautiful picture. Most people probably will recognize this.
Yeah.
And I think kind of maybe this is kind of to set the scene, Cornel. Digital transformation is not a new topic. I think also with COVID, it has been accelerating, like in a top priority on how to execute it.
Yeah.
But we meet a lot of executives that feel like, hey, these things are going too slow, right? So one of the key insights is actually we're competing here for speed. There's a level of urgency. So how do we kind of, just like this, how do we kind of get these things going a little bit faster?
And hopefully, well, don't get into a situation where we're blocking up vital traffic for, banks actually deal with a lot of, supply chains and systems that are actually super important. Right?
I think that's actually the picture, right? Yeah, the big boat is, of course, kind of, many banks, and especially the infrastructure they have, but also the process they have, and to a degree, maybe even their culture, it is quite monolithic.
Yep.
It is quite massive, so it is very easy that you kind of lose speed, right? So I think it's all about how do you move from this big container, preferably this metaphor, into more of a speedboat approach
Nice.
to get stuff done a little bit faster.
So maybe let's dive into it, right?
Yeah, let's go
to the topic. What is digital transformation?
Well, I think if we kind of go look at the, and this is also to the audience, but if we look at kind of the bigger picture, I think before we talk about digital transformation, it might be good actually to look at one mega trend out there, and that is that pretty much every aspect of our lives is getting now organized by platforms.
I use them every day.
Right? You push a button, you get
Yeah.
food delivery. You push another button, you get music. So all these mega platforms, from food delivery to cloud initiatives, whatever is out there, from e-commerce to media to entertainment, they have a few common concepts. One, if you can look here at the picture, they basically created a new normal.
Yep.
At the top of these platforms, they make a 10x better experience compared to the traditional alternative, right? And then in the middle, what they call the engagement layer, they orchestrate value. So they can connect to the kitchens, they can connect to the restaurants, they can connect to the drivers, even without owning the kitchens or even without a relationship with the drivers, but you are really in this orchestration role. So if we look at the essence of digital transformation, I think it's safe to say that the society as a whole is moving into a model that platforms orchestrate customer value.
I mean, if I look at that, I basically see a platform, whatever it might be, like you said, different types of industries, but connecting supply and demand, very simply.
Yeah.
Bringing them together and acting as a fantastic middleman almost, or...
At least value orchestration.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you aggregate and then you streamline customer journeys.
Perfect.
I think that's kind of the basic formula which we can learn from that.
Awesome.
So if we look at the next overview here, is what you see here on the screen is basically maybe a concerning conclusion, but the existing way banks are organized, both in the channel architecture, the IT landscape, it's all about channels, it's all about products and pushing products via channels to customers. And I think the reality check here is that the traditional incumbent approach will not survive in this era where platforms orchestrate value. So what we basically see here on the screen is kind of digital transformation. What is the simplest definition? How do we move away from the incumbent model, which is based on products and silos? How do we move that into something that is similar to a platform, like an Uber platform, where you have a single horizontal engagement banking platform that is, in a sense, customer-centric? Easier said than done, right? Most incumbent architectures are product-centric or channel-centric, but how do you kind of transform that existing model into something that is customer-centric? And how do you move it from a vertical siloed model into a horizontal model that is all about how do we orchestrate these customer journeys and remove the friction?
Well, I know personally that I've had so many messages from my own banks here in the Netherlands where they clearly have no idea who I am. They're not connecting my value to the market or whatever it might be. At the end of the day, there has to be a benefit also to the banks themselves to make a play like this. So what is the benefit if they do move towards a platform?
Yeah, well, I think the first question, of course, is do you believe that the, let's say, existing channel infrastructure with all the legacy fragmentation and the cost to operate that, you know, is that going to be a viable model to fight back against fintech and big tech in general, or to fight back against? And I think that's kind of the basic rationale, like why to do digital transformation. Most likely this model on the left is too expensive and it lacks any form of agility, right? So therefore, on the right side, I think there's, and we can explore that together, Kunal, but there's benefits both for the end customer. I think it's in the end of the day all about removing friction. How do we remove all the friction for you as an end customer, either a consumer, a family man with children, a small business owner?
I was going to say the business is...
Right.
Yeah.
So that's clear, but then at the same time, wouldn't it be nice? What if that same platform could also orchestrate the employee journeys and enable employees in the front office, advisors that visit you at home, people that can meet you in a kiosk, where they can leverage the same platform and pretty much everything the customer can do, also the advisor can do it in an assisted type of model, but one platform.
Yeah, like the Ubers, like you were saying, right?
Same like the taxi driver and the consumer, correct?
Same app.
Yeah. So the next picture here is kind of what you see on the screen is also kind of illustrating that the left side picture with the incumbent traditional siloed architecture is also really expensive. So you see on the picture here, which is from Bain and Company, the legacy core platforms, the annual cost per retail customer between $300 and $400. And
this is just the average annual cost. So it might also be higher.
Could be higher, could be lower, but in every bank, also here in the audience or any advisor, you can do your own math. But I think one thing for sure, you pretty much know what is the cost to service the customer, right? What's your cost to service? With kind of the existing infrastructure. And then on the right in the picture, you now see that these neo banks or these challenger banks, but I'm not only talking about smaller fintechs, we're talking about the Revoluts, the Chimes, the Venmos with PayPal, Square Cash in North America. They're popping up all over the world, big tech and new fintechs. But I think the key thing here is that they will take that platform approach like Uber from day one, right? They are platform companies by themselves, or they have the clean sheet to start, and it will give them not only the opportunity to orchestrate these customer journeys at a very efficient level and remove all the friction, but also, maybe even more concerning, they can do this at 1/3 of the cost.
Yep. Which is a significant difference.
And I think that's kind of the topic of this CxO, like digital transformation. We know these pictures, we know these differences in cost and operating models. So how do we actually kind of embark on an effective journey together to make these digital transformations go faster and help legacy or traditional banks to kind of fight back and really have a fighting chance and utilize modern technology to operate at a similar cost level. Yeah.
And I think also for the audience at home, if you would like to know which report we used or to have access to it, if we can share, we can. Happy reach out to our marketing team when you also reach out for the slides, and happy to share with you.
It's in the public domain, absolutely. Yes. Right. So just like an Uber, we've seen in the previous slides, so I think the larger vision is that there's just this need for an engagement platform. So the way we think about the market is basically you have your systems of record, right? Yep. Your processing systems, your core banking system, your CRM system, card issuing, also. You don't have to replace them. So that's basically what you see at the bottom. Yep. The little circles over there, the core system, other banks, fintechs. They are kind of at the processing layer, but on top of that, you need to have this engagement layer. And that's really where you orchestrate all your customer interactions, both in a self-service model as well as assisted by your front office employees. Clear. So very similar to Netflix, very similar to Uber. We believe that at the core of a digital transformation program, there is something called the engagement layer or the engagement banking platform. And either you build this or you buy this or you do a combination. But at the core of digital transformation execution is like, how do you kind of go and implement that platform vision, just like Uber, where you can orchestrate the value exchange for your customers.
I actually saw this. So, as you know, I do a lot of work across Africa. Yep. With obviously a wonderful team. And what we've noticed there, especially in the COVID time, is that price, essentially things like transaction fees, which a lot of banks rely on, they disappeared for the best part of 2020. And when price disappears, the only thing that's left for them is quality of service. Yep. And especially in today's world, that quality of service has to be digital. We've seen more and more and more. So how can, what are the lessons learned as we go through? Please have that in the back of your mind about how we can actually engage and make sure that when price disappears and that's completely the same, how a quality of service can actually be enabled digitally for end users.
Yeah, let's dive in a little bit, I guess, right? Cool. So I think what it really starts with kind of the notion, and this is completely agnostic of Backbase, so ignore Backbase in this context, right? Of course, this is our core business, but think about the notion that what if you could have a platform that can orchestrate all your customer journeys from onboarding to servicing to cross and upsell. Yep. So this is almost like the mini executive summary of what to do in your North Star digital transformation. Clear. Get customers in, service them in a fantastic way at the lowest cost to service, and then expand your share of wallet. Right? Maybe it's not a complete story, but it's pretty close to what you would like to do. So the larger ambition is that if you really want to compete and you execute, so what's the end state of digital transformation? I would say this. Clear. A single platform to orchestrate it. So to your point, the bank knows you because it's one platform that is orchestrating all these interactions. When you have problems, someone can assist you in that journey. It's all working from that same orchestration platform. Because I think that's the point. Right now, all these activities are in fragmented, siloed sub-applications.
Been there.
Right?
Yeah, been there.
And that's also, I think, in these siloed applications, you can try to duct tape them together, but A, your cost level will stay high, and it will be impossible to really orchestrate these seamless customer journeys. So you better then go into, let's make a heat map of all these customer interactions, and let's figure out journey by journey by journey, how can we clean up this kind of landscape and make all of these journeys based on the pain or the friction reduction or based on the ROI for the bank. You can really prioritize them and give a rationale to your digital transformation program, right? Because where to start, right? You're probably going to start with the journeys where you have the biggest gain.
Most impact,
most impact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, at the end of the day, if 5% of customers actually use a certain journey, why would you prioritize that one versus the one that 95% of customers actually use, right?
Of course.
It doesn't make sense.
No, it's just basic 101 economics. There
course.
you go. Yeah, and I think the cool part here is that, so if you think about the engagement layer and the opportunity to orchestrate all your customer journeys, I think it has a fantastic impact on ROI. So, why do this in the first place, right? We've seen examples where you can get 18 times faster onboarding, or you can truly, within a year, you can increase your upsell or your share of wallet with 40% in a single year, right? Or all these other kind of scenarios, like increased conversion, lower cost to service, all those capabilities are possible, right? So I would say the engagement layer and customer engagement is really in the heart of your business.
I mean, at the end of the at the end of the day, I look at those numbers as somebody on the outside put on an executive hat, and I go, "This looks awesome." I mean, as far as the North Star goes, it makes sense. But one thing that at least I've seen, I know that you've seen as well, is the focus is always on the customer, right? Which makes sense. The customer is at the heart.
Yeah.
I think also employees are also a pretty important part of the equation, and they sometimes get forgotten. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the basic idea is kind of very simple, and it's a very simple but very powerful idea, is that with an engagement platform or in that layer, ideally your platform approach, the same platform is creating that superior customer experience, delighting your end customers, but at the same time it's also empowering your employees.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's just bizarre if you look at the last 30 years in banking that we try to solve a single problem with multiple solutions, like a branch application, a call center application, an advisor application, and they're all siloed, and even worse, they're probably being developed in different decades. So you see different decades of technology being siloed. So I think the whole evolution of the engagement layer in the past was almost like technology driven. Hey, there's this new technology. Hey, there's a call center.
Let's
hey,
put
there's
it in place.
Right? We just follow. So it was technology led and it was channel led. Let's automate another channel to push products. And I think right now we can just say, if you kind of reframe this and you do a paradigm shift, where you say, let's take the platform approach. Basically, whatever you solve for the customer, with very little extra effort, solve for the employee as well.
I mean, I know a few employees of banks, and I know some that also have to use, I'm not going to quote the type of system or how old, but some very old ones.
Yeah.
And I've been told it's almost sometimes like going back into, for those of you who might be a little bit older, you've seen The Matrix, it probably came out when you were already in your teens at least. Green screen, flying through, searching for a customer in the terminal. But today, basically what you're saying is there's essentially no excuse to have that anymore.
No, I think with very little, basic, I would say everything you solve for the customer, by default, it's solved for the employee because you run on the same platform. Maybe for your employees, you would like to give them some additional capabilities. Maybe you would like to give them more granular entitlements that they can act on behalf of the customer. Yep. But it's basically two sides of the same coin. And I think that's the beautiful part. You're creating a journey once. So you can call this omni-channel, but you basically create a journey and you do it kind of, of course, typically you predominantly empower your end customers, self-directed, lower cost per contact, but where needed and where essential, to really work on the NPS or to help cross and upsell or share of wallet, the actual employee can step in and assist where it makes sense.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So the key question, and I guess, is kind of, I think the bigger picture is clear. So it's all about kind of this engagement layer and the platformification of our society and these platforms orchestrating stuff. But then I guess execution is king, right? Or key.
I mean, at the end of the day, you can have the most wonderful PowerPoints, you can have the most wonderful strategy documents in the world, but you need to put it into production at the end of the day, get it in the customer's hands, right?
Yeah, so this is maybe a little bit complicated picture, but what you see here is kind of the change management program. So at the bottom, you see the blue bar is that typically starts with the definition stage where you do the strategy and the business model discussion. I think most banks have doing that already. So let's say you have your strategy consultant recommendation in place, but then it's about for today, but also for the future sessions of our CxO Digital Transformation Live Talks, the emphasis will be very much on execution. So I would say just let's dive in and let's explore that a little bit further. So typically, when you talk about it, I think this is really, it's a bit of a meaty slide, but here you see the 3 layers for the people in the audience. So at the top, you see your engagement layer, and that's where you see some fragmented solutions that are already interacting with your customers or with your employees. Some of them are great, some of them are so-so, probably need to be replaced in 5 years down the road, and some of them are really, burning platforms and not so great. And you see also a lot of white space in that engagement layer, where a lot of stuff is not digital at all, right?
Yep.
So it's still paper or branch based. So I think that's kind of a fitness assessment, like for also people in the audience. We've seen one of the key best practices actually first start with an assessment, like set aside from the strategy consulting, like what systems do you have in your engagement layer? What systems do you have in your processing layer? And then what is available in your infrastructure, your data center layer, right? And then from there, if that's the fitness assessment today, how do you make a goal for 3 years out where you say, step by step, I want to prioritize my customer journeys, as you can see here in the picture, right? So you think about these journeys, you want to re-architect them for versatility, you want to do it on a single platform, and you would like to add new journeys to the mix. But this could be a very concrete from to in your digital transformation roadmap. And of course, I think especially removing friction, follow the pain, follow the money, could be a good guidance on how to prioritize the execution of these new journeys.
I mean, I'm quite interested in, maybe just to zoom in, you put 3 years out, or we're looking at 3 years out here on the slide, whereas, quite a lot of banks and people in financial services will, look at a 5 to 10 year sort of period, especially when it comes to things like ROI or getting the money back, as it were, from investments. But in the digital world, did you pick 3 years because 5 years is too long, or what are your thoughts there in terms of that kind of outlook?
Well, it's a great question. I do think also, everybody in the audience can make their own judgment call, but personally, I do sense a level of urgency. If I look at the speed of big tech, if I look at the speed of fintech and the versatility and the agility and also the investments people make there, they are releasing on a sprint-by-sprint basis. That's every 2 weeks, Cornel.
Yeah, that's very fast.
They are releasing on a monthly basis. So I think in this platform economy, I think that's normal. That's the new normal. That's the next normal. So I would definitely say that a 5-year plan, to my taste, is very long and maybe was possible. You could get away with it, but I would say in today's economy, out of this picture, I would like to see results in the first 6 months, then 9 months, then 12 months. Just go for a quarterly cadence and lock in real value for customers and for the bank.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I just thought I'd ask because it was an interesting choice of timing.
No, I think it's good to set a slightly more ambitious target, like 3 years. Absolutely. Then at the same time, I think this engagement layer, and I think that's really important. The engagement layer is the part that is visible to your customers and to your employees. So if you think about renovating, I would kind of prioritize the engagement layer because that's kind of the shop. That's where people interact with you. That's kind of where you make instant impact on customer satisfaction, conversion, share of wallet, all those elements. You basically orchestrate these journeys. They are the moment of truth. If they don't work, they don't work. And it is negative for everything. Negative for net promoter, loyalty, retention, conversion. It's just negative.
Well, the amount of app reviews that I look at a lot of apps, it's like 1 star, can't log in.
Yeah. So I would say, guys, the biggest urgency is to fix what is visible to the customer, and that's in the engagement layer. So you really need to nail that. The good thing is that the engagement layer can be decoupled from your traditional backend systems. So you don't have to replace everything there, right? So I think that's also what you see here in the second part of the diagram, that you can still repurpose some of the systems that are just too difficult or too expensive to replace, right? So you can repurpose some of your systems of record, keep the shop open, fight for the customer relationship, and really own the engagement layer. And then at the same time, you can also start to kind of progressively renovate some of these processing layer capabilities. And I think there's a whole host of fantastic cloud-based fintechs for KYC, for AML, for bill pay. There's a whole wide host of these different players, which now creates a nice opportunity to directly connect them to your engagement layer. And pretty much from the get-go, they are there available, pre-integrated, ready to go. And you can start to renovate that processing layer.
Well, I mean, cloud today, obviously, it's for some it might be a buzzword, but at the end of the day, as you said, you can basically go, well, today, right? If you get it in place. And I think that value is Yeah,
We're
immeasurable.
going to discuss that a little bit more. I mean, and of course, everybody is the architect of their own future, right? So people can do this in many ways, and we're going to explore that. But this is, regardless of how you do it, I think this is a little bit of an overlay of how to think about kind of defining a roadmap. And then finally, of course, at the infrastructure layer, I think there's this larger move, like number 5, major shift to the cloud. I think this will give bank the opportunity to kind of replace some of that legacy infrastructure and kind of really move that instantly to the cloud.
Oh, nice. So maybe just maybe a quick check into into our LinkedIn live chat.
Let's see.
So also to the audience at home, I think it's very important that also based on what you've heard today, if you've got any feedback for us, more than welcome to take it in the chat. Questions, always welcome. Personally, I'm quite interested to know from anybody watching today, and also if you're watching this further down the road in a recording. Out of this digital transformation roadmap, which items, especially on the engagement layer, that you actually see as the most important, or that have the most friction for your customers today? The one that I constantly see is just people not being able to log in. I mentioned it before, but the amount of 1-star negative app reviews from something as simple as I am a customer and I cannot log in. Yeah, it boggles my mind that that's still a problem today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's so many unhappy paths, right? And just the authentication journey, or in change your password, register your device, you got a new phone. There's so many details, but the good news is that's one of those areas that you can really industrialize and you can go really, really fast.
Yeah. Well, that would be the idea, right?
Like and also the amount of call center volume for people forgot my password, cannot log in. The amount of cost, just that dissatisfier, which can be completely eliminated. If it just works, it works, right? It's seamless.
And I have flashbacks myself to, like my dad or something being locked out and, just ringing somebody on the call center side, and through no fault of his or the call center person, they have a nasty conversation about, I can't access my money. Where's my money?
It's all self-inflicted wounds. There's no need for it.
So well, on that note, if you do have any of these stories yourselves, we'd love to hear them, and also if you have any questions on it on this topic, we'd love to take it also in the chat.
Do we already have questions in the chat?
Let me check. So we have one from Shravan here, which says 5 years, 10 years is a thing of the past. How are you putting roadmaps within quarter or maximum a year? Important. Cloud transformation is just making all organizations at the very least agile. So how can you pace digital transformation across all these different layers in such a challenging environment?
Yeah, we're gonna dissect that a little bit more probably in the next 15 minutes. But I think the prioritization, what we typically do is we call it a heat map, but we do kind of your digital process analysis, like what customer interactions do you have, product group per product group, business line by business line.
Yep.
And so you basically get quite a nice quadrant about customer onboarding processes in retail, business, etc.
Yep.
And you've got this whole table where you can basically see like a heat map, like where's the biggest pain and friction, and from there. We basically see that either you can decide your priority, but then you can also analyze like, hey, do I already have accelerators in place? Do I already have mature systems that can help me out to find a solution? Can I go to market to identify fintechs that can help out? So we've got a few formulas there, but I think I would first really prioritize it based on this kind of value map and analyze, follow the pain, analyze the friction, which is basically a big quadrant, and then out of the quadrant, that can kind of define your starting point.
Yeah, okay. But ultimately, if I'm sort of hearing you and just saying the question that we're trying to answer is how fast can we go, and where do we begin?
Yeah,
right?
We can go very fast. Maybe I can park that, but we can go really fast. I think whatever you are in that quadrant, I've seen examples that within 3 to 6 months, you can be up and running and live with your customers. So especially everything in the space of customer onboarding, credit card origination, loan origination. So basically everything in this digital sales domain. Customer onboarding and product origination, you can get really fast results as in 3 to 6 months. Then on the support side, right, the digital banking side, similar type of speed. Realistically, I would say between 6 and 9 months, but then you can really fully digitize customer-facing, web and mobile, as well as employee in one go, and you can do that product line or business line by line, like retail business, business banking, etc. So,
I mean, maybe to seg also into the slide that we've got up, it's an interesting topic because there's so many systems out there, especially if I put on the hat of a CIO or a CTO or a COO, right? Yep. Where do you begin? Which do you buy? Which do you build? And then on top of that, I get asked this question a lot by executives, right? Okay, so there's this problem or there's this cost, but then that must just be the tip of the iceberg as well. And I think we have a few words to share there. So what are your thoughts, maybe if I can ask you that very broad question in terms of the buy versus build topic?
The market is, I would say, very fragmented. If I can maybe summarize it, I see the larger banks still have a tendency to say, let's do custom development in the engagement layer.
Yep.
But they have the luxury of, let's say, dozens, if not a couple of hundred of developers. They recruit and retain to kind of reinvent the engagement layer on their own, so custom build.
Yep.
In my mind, I think you always wonder, like, are you going to build your own CRM? Like, you probably wouldn't. So I still would say also in the tier one, but of course I'm slightly biased. I would say there's this trend that more and more also of the larger banks that can build everything themselves, they kind of now start to see that an out-of-the-box EBP, you basically have this build versus buy thing, and probably it's more like you buy something and then you build on top of it. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to reinvent the complete wheel. So that's kind of more, I would say, in the tier one, the larger banks that have the luxury to develop a lot of them on their own. If you go a little bit more mid-market, the mid-sized banks towards the smaller banks, I think they have a different problem. They typically have to buy something, but it was hard-coded. It was one size fits all. It was cookie cutter. You can give it a different color, but that's about it, right? So they would like to kind of move out of that prison and kind of get a little bit more creativity to differentiate themselves and to really own their own kind of digital future. Yep. And I think it kind of introduces maybe also to the audience, like if you think about either you buy or you build, I think this picture is describing it. Like if you look at the larger problem to do a full digital transformation and to basically what we're discussing in the previous slide, you have to reimagine and rewrite every customer journey. And ideally you do it on a single common platform. That is a major tour de force, right? So
it's a big endeavor.
Yeah, I would say, think about what's the bill of material. Do you really see the full iceberg, right? There's the tipping of the iceberg, but then there's everything below the surface. And I think people can read it here on the screen, but that's massive. If I look at most of these custom built initiatives, very often after 3-4 years of work, it's a little bit disappointing what most banks can show for. And also in Backbase, we've seen it, how much work. Like we right now have 600 to 700 people working on this iceberg full time.
But we don't have to run a bank at the same time, right?
True, but I'm just trying to make the point. It's a lot of work to do this properly. It's a lot of work. So I think there's kind of potential to kind of figure it out. Like how much do you need to build to differentiate, and how much can you actually leverage to accelerate?
No, but what I meant there was, we don't have to run a bank at the same time as running a technology company, right? So banks that might choose to build, and there's a lot that make that choice. You kind of have to do both, right? You have to keep the lights on from a technical perspective.
True. Yeah, run the bank, change the bank,
and run the bank and change the bank. I mean, that's
true.
That's a lot to take.
There's no judgment call, right? It's just a reality check. Like, hey, what's the path forward, right? What are the different formulas to operate? And some people do a brilliant job, and others are struggling a little bit. So it's all about their kind of compare notes. From the Backbase point of view, from the bank's point of view, and we're going to see a lot of different banking executives joining us in these live talks, just to share like, hey, we made this mistake, or this really worked well, and that way we move forward. Yeah,
because I can imagine that, at least from the exec side, the iceberg, we want to unpack those, especially.
Yeah, so I think, and that's maybe also to the audience, and I think there's this trend in the platform world. What you see here on the screen, there's now this beautiful concept called white label platforms. This company here on the screen, maybe some of you know them, they're called Shopify. And they basically said like, hey, we're going to give large retailers, mid-sized retailers, and small retailers, we're going to give them a white label e-commerce platform, so overnight they can compete with Amazon. Yeah. And I think we see that more and more, right? We see it with point of sales, we see it with e-commerce. You see these white label platforms that basically say, as a core business, we're going to kind of do this iceberg end to end, and then you can rent this in the cloud as an instant accelerator, and then still, you can take it as is, or you want to extend it, or you can actually innovate on top of these platforms, but you just use it as, a foundation, API-led SDKs, and you innovate on top of it. But it kind of gets you a lot of industrialized power to dramatically increase your speed to market.
Well, I mean, I've used Squarespace, Shopify, and things myself.
Yeah.
Super easy to use.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I would recommend it to everyone.
I think Cornell, it's part probably we've seen it. You've seen it with e-commerce. You've seen it with web content management. We've seen it with CRM. This is just a natural evolution for the market to realize that hey, these white label platforms are out there, and I think also now you will see more and more white labels for banking.
Yep.
Right, so you can choose. It's kind of you pick and choose. You can leverage it, you can adopt it, but you can also still innovate on top of it yourself.
Clear.
So just to think a little bit about the iceberg, and this is a Backbase picture, but for the audience, ignore Backbase. That's irrelevant. But if you just want to think about the bill of materials, right? So it all goes from the infrastructure at the bottom, like the DevOps stuff, then the security, the compliancy stuff, your data layer, your data lake, your data integration, your machine learning. Then your digital banking capabilities complementing your legacy core, your digital sales process management, the case manager, the rules engines, all of that. And then your digital assist and the engage, like the notifications, the chat, the smart cross and upsell campaigns. So it doesn't really matter how you want to do it. You can build this, you can partly build this, you can completely rely on something like this in the cloud. But I think this is an order of magnitude. What I see here on this picture to really make this work, I think at a minimum, you need 500 to 800 people full-time for another 5 years to do this. And I think that's the order of magnitude if you would like to do it like an Uber on a single platform. And there's many ways to do this, but I think do not underestimate the investment that is required to really kind of get this going.
I think that, to the audience, this is words of wisdom from the CEO of the company that's also helped to do this, right?
Maybe I'm a little bit too pet because we have so many scars on our back. Like we know the pain, and you typically do a first version and then it doesn't work. You do another version, and only after the third trial, your teams and the development teams arrive at the point like it's almost like any craft, right? You need to do a few times before the deliverable is great.
Practice makes perfect, right? That's what they say.
I think just to highlight that part. So I think once you kind of see that notion and you see that there's this possibility now, and I think this is a message to the people in the audience, but also to strategy consultants. I think if you think about digital transformation, I don't think it's buy versus build. I think it's a very different formula. I think it's kind of almost like an a la carte menu where you can adopt. Hey, this is great, like your login process, right? Yeah. Do you want to reinvent that or just gonna take it out of the box and it's, superior UX, battle tested through many cycles of customer feedback, it works, right? So you can save a lot of time there. You don't have to focus like 20 sprints just nailing that, right? You can just go fast and you can adopt. Then you can extend. And where possible, if you have a big army of developers or you really want to control your future, you can really reallocate those great UXers and those developers, etc., on additional incremental value for both the customer and for the bank.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many neobanks installed on my phone in terms of apps. I've done so much of the onboarding. Yeah, but really, they don't differentiate in terms of actually how you become a customer or how you enroll. I think those, you could basically swap the logos out. It's almost the same because it just works, right? The patterns are industrialized to a large extent.
Yeah, you're right. So I would say they really differentiate a lot. I do think they're 10x better than the classic incumbent model, but between themselves, there's clearly patterns that are proven, right? And what if you could kind of get those patterns out of a platform like this instantly ready to go? Yeah. Sure.
Well, 100%. Well, one is, one is good for travel, one is good for e-commerce, one is good for X, Y, Z. That's really where they focus.
So if you think about that, and that's also what you see here on the next slide, I think there's a bit of a blueprint here that we can now think in, okay, there's the engagement layer, there's the processing layer. On top of the engagement layer, you have your customer journeys, and there are these blueprints, right? So everything in customer onboarding, you need to have these journeys, for whatever product you do the customer onboarding for. Yeah. You need to integrate that with, preferably some cloud-based KYC, AML, and a few others. And that end-to-end capability now is instantly available in the cloud, and you can repurpose that, right? Yeah. And you can do the same with a greenfield bank, like, anything on the self-servicing side, you can connect this to a core, or we have out-of-the-box core connectors to the incumbent cores or to the neobank cores you see here at the bottom. And also those capabilities, I do expect a future where more and more, both the engagement layer, which is cloud-based, as well as the processing layer, also best of breed, cloud-based, come pre-integrated, end-to-end, ready to consume. I really think the market is moving in that direction.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're really, and if you look at the Shopify paradigm, if we're really trending towards that, which it looks like we are, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Why wouldn't we have these connectors?
Yeah. No, but I think Shopify did exactly the same thing, right? All the different payment times, your inventory, your supply chain, your logistics, your distribution, your product catalog, your marketing campaign tooling, end-to-end, pre-integrated with best-of-breed fulfillment partners like the processing layer. I think there's nothing new on this slide. It's just applying Shopify or e-commerce lessons directly in the context of banking.
Fair play.
Yeah. All right, and of course, maybe also quite important, of course, I think the little plus there is also very important. Nothing is preventing you to innovate directly in both the engagement layer and in the processing layer. You can also repurpose existing systems. So basically there's the adopt with kind of the pre-built versus the build, where you can innovate and differentiate on your own.
Yep.
So I think talking about this acceleration, I think this picture is kind of showing a little bit of an example here. It's like, I think this is almost like a little bit like a desired outcome end state. And you can pick and choose where you want to go, but how do you go fast on this engagement layer, journey by journey, adopt, extend, build? Then on the processing layer, you can repurpose your legacy systems, right? So you don't have to replace them. They can coexist and you can extend their lifetime. And at the same time, how can you leverage pre-integrated fintech just to go faster? And then at the bottom, the cloud stuff. So I think and this was maybe one of the previous questions, Cornel, is that how do you define your own path? And I think the good thing here is that here you see your lines of business, retail, SME, corporate, wealth, and you see your different journeys, like online account opening, etc. But I think the cool thing is you can just start wherever you like, right? So you can start here, you can add something later, and then over time, you can just define your own path. But I think the end goal is that whatever you do, all the quadrants here in the matrix are enabled by the same platform.
Yep.
And your starting points, your first position, your second position, completely flexible. I think the good thing here is that you avoid the risk of building this beautiful customer journey as a one-off. Yet another silo, right?
That's a big worry for a lot of customers.
That's the major thing between a platform play versus a point solution play. Yeah. And I really think point solutions are nice, but point solutions will basically another generation of legacy because they fundamentally don't solve the real problem.
And that's actually, well, I'll ask you in the Q&A because there is a question tied to this also in the chat that I can see.
Let's skip this because we can also do this later. It's fine.
Well, I'm just looking at the time. Maybe we have 1 or 2 minutes if you want to wrap up. I don't know if you want to leave a key message for people before we go into Q&A or.
No, I really look forward kind of to the Q&A. I think overall, I think what you kind of see here is that I think the key message here is that there's a level of urgency, I would say. I think there's merit in having a very good understanding of what you as a bank would like to do in the engagement layer. So in this engagement layer, I think regardless of how you do it, but the end goal is that how do you streamline all your customer journeys? And ideally, how can you do this with a single platform that is powering both your customers and your employees? So just like Uber, you don't have to duplicate that logic, and step by step, you move away from that monolithic, siloed-based landscape. I think that's, in a nutshell, if I can summarize it, all these customer interactions in the traditional model are orchestrated by too many silos with decades of legacy code. And I think no matter what, we basically have to go through a process that will replace that, not with another generation of custom-built silos, but we're replacing that with a single platform view. So you can really orchestrate all these journeys on a single platform. And the reason why it has to be a single platform is then you have the true intelligence. You get efficiency, you don't have to duplicate logic, and you can really track and trace the customer in all their interactions. Well, you know where they are.
You brought it up before. I mean, also, just to seg a bit, but you brought it up before in terms of, people don't build their own CRMs that often anymore, right? That's a thing of the past. But also, generally, people don't buy multiple CRMs or multiple core banking systems to do the same function, right? They go on one platform. So you're saying basically that it's the same reasoning. You should also look at the engagement layer, that you go for a more holistic kind of solution, so you don't spread the risk, I guess, or spread the cost, or.
I think the most executives we meet, and maybe that's one of the best practices, I think they genuinely care about digital transformation. Yeah. And they genuinely want to kind of create a superior customer experience, right? So I think it's more about the understanding of what is your optionality in executing it.
Yep.
And I think there, and I think that's a very valid point, people do want and must differentiate.
Yeah.
Right? So
course.
I don't want to be a T-Ford, I don't want to be in this cookie cutter thing, so you need to kind of control your own future. So I think a lot of the intent is is perfectly focused and aligned. Control your digital future, do it yourself, make sure that the experience is superior and differentiating. I think now, hopefully with this kickoff, I think the market also starts to see that there's different roads to Rome, right? There is definitely journey by journey you can pick. Do I need to reinvent the wheel here, literally reinvent the wheel, or can I just go faster by adopting it and focus my differentiation energy somewhere else? So I think also it has to do with the maturity of the market. The market is very early on. Let's say, 20 years ago, people were writing their own CRM because CRM is an important vision, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it also has to do a little bit with the market maturity where people now get more optionality. There was no Shopify of banking 5 years ago, right? Today there is. So it's also the market and the suppliers are evolving, giving the bankers different, I would say, economies of scale and faster time to market.
No, clear. No, thank you. It's obviously a very interesting topic. Otherwise, we also wouldn't have people watching at home or at the office. But yeah, I think for a lot of us also working from home today. So quick Q&A, I guess. If I look at towards the audience, if you do have any questions, please send them through. I'm actually going to tackle the first question from Vinod. And that's the one that I had in mind before. So the problem is how to start and where on a transformation journey. Obviously, there's many ways to slice an onion, right?
Yeah.
If I can use a cooking expression.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, where would you begin? You have all the journeys that we saw on the slides previously, right?
Yeah.
How would you choose which one to tackle? Here we say, we start on retail web. Does this have to be the starting point?
No, I think the answer is quite simple. I think you can start anywhere. You can literally start anywhere. I think that has been the biggest problem with digital transformation. It feels like boiling an ocean, like it's overwhelming. It's so big. Where do you start?
Yep.
Right? So I would just say, let's do a step back and maybe just a very simple rule. A couple of things. First, start to take the customer point of view. Like, where's the biggest pain and the biggest friction for the customer, right?
Yep.
So you automatically, if you solve them, you will have the popularity vote and the retention and the share of wallet of your customer. So I would say one, outside in, start with the customer and make an impact list of what journeys can you make the biggest impact. Then the second analysis, kind of do a little bit of an internal fitness analysis, like what systems do you already have? Can you rely on them? What are the prerequisites you typically need to integrate to your core? So is there an API layer? Some systems you cannot replace, you really need to integrate with. So you're looking at from your internal application landscape fitness point of view, and you're looking at from your customer view. And then you bring these things together. And then with a platform approach like this, you can kind of start to say, okay, what are my ingredients? Like, what is important to the customer? What do I have in my processing layer? And what elements in the EBP can actually give me a head start?
Clear. I think that's it's follow the customer's voice, right?
Absolutely.
It's the old Bezos. Well, I say old Bezos just because Amazon has been around for so long now.
20 years.
Like a lifetime. But they were always focused and obsessed with the customer, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for banking, you're saying.
I love it. Like Amazon, don't bother about your competition. Just focus on the customer. Focus on the customer journeys, and if you solve that, your flywheel will run.
Nice. Thank you. I guess we have a few questions still, so I hope you're okay for time, Jaak, if we stay a little bit longer.
I'm okay.
People seem to be quite engaged, which is good. So Shravan asks a bit of a longer question. So Shravan, I'm going to condense it a little bit. But we're looking at disruptors such as AML and blockchain that are obviously having an impact on banking and FIs.
Yeah.
But what kind of use cases do you envisage in the near term in the 6 to 12 months? That's question one. And then question two, tangentially linked to insurance, but we're looking at solutions to transform their distributor landscape. But moving into the digital channels, the question, Shravan is interested to know how you can help enhance or add new revenues to those channels as well. Yeah. So the first is use cases that you see from some of the new disruptive technologies, sorry,
yeah.
And then how we can actually commercialize them. I think that's a key question.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, just to try to answer it step by step. I think with most of the digital transformations, we see a couple of things you need to do. One, there is no way around the fact that you would like to integrate with your incumbent systems, right? That's what you see here on the screen at the bottom, the orange circle, the core systems. They are the system of record, so I think it's a prerequisite that you have your API strategy in place to decouple your systems of record from the engagement layer and make them work together.
Clear.
Nothing fancy, no innovation, but just kind of plain must-do work. Part of the iceberg, you need to get it done, right? Then the second part is that I think it's mostly it's different for retail and for business and for corporate and for wealth, but you typically have your one-on-one journeys that you really need to nail. Like if the login process for Cornel's example is still not working and it's flooding your call center, there's friction in the basic one-on-one operation of the bank. So our recommendation, at least best practice what we've seen, solve those one-on-one dissatisfiers. And that can be in customer onboarding, in customer self-service, or in share of wallet kind of sales journeys, but just remove the friction and you will see very instant ROI in call center volume reduction, in increasing your share of wallet, having more customers onboarding. So I would almost say follow the economic. Very often, making the customer happy is also direct impact in things that make the P&L happy, right? Just these things correlate. So I would just say that's the second priority, do that. And then thirdly, to your point, beyond that point with an engagement platform is designed to give you innovation power. Because it's, to Cornel's point, it's an aggregator, it's an orchestration. So you can connect this to AML, to Bitcoin, to anything, to insurance, to Lemonade. So it's basically almost like the platform that will enable you to do platform innovation or business model innovation, right?
Yep.
It basically will say, get the basics in place, remove the dissatisfiers, and then this open space is there.
Then you can play.
Yeah, and also you can add those new features journey by journey, I would say on a monthly, if not quarterly basis, and you can really go for a much more, I would say, progressive innovation agenda.
Okay, I think also in terms of AML or blockchain, Shravan, I would almost ask if blockchain is the answer, what is the question, right? It should always be, how does this impact the customer?
Well, to his point, to give some context, for instance, on what we basically see, for instance, both in the consumer space as well as in the small business space, in the engagement layer, frequency of interactions are really important. All the players like Robinhood, Revolut, Chime, all these guys, they all are competing for frequency of use. Because you are the primary financial app, right?
Yep.
So I would say fractional stock trading or blockchain trading, they are high frequency habit shaping type of capability. So it's not just a nice to have. I really think those elements and some of these challenger banks show that to be the preferred app, you need to have those sticky high frequency elements as part of the behavior to be competitive.
Clear. Yeah, it's I have nothing to say there because I'm actually a user of a lot of those kinds of.
You're on Binance and the usual suspects, of course.
Of course, they're so easy to use. It's almost impossible not to. So I'm looking through, and we have a few other liked questions here. We have one from Victor. Hello, Victor. Victor asks, how do you cater for regulatory and country visions or strategy over the next 3 to 5 years, considering countries are all at different stages within. Yeah. Sometimes even the same region.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you see that playing out over the years? Yeah,
let's dissect it. I think the overall, for everybody here in the audience, I'm encouraged by the direction and the speed. I think regulators are opening up more and more and more. So I think the overall trend is very positive. I think then it's more about a timing per region, about how fast and how progressive. Maybe to dissect it a little bit, I think what is very encouraging is that we now see the move to cloud and running the data in private clouds in most of the regions in the world. It is approved, and I think it's undeniable. The joint forces of everybody is moving to that direction. So I think we are already, for most regions, completely fine with cloud deployment. Most of the central banks already authorized that for local examples, and I expect that trend to continue. Then secondly, it will have a lot of impact in customer onboarding. So the KYC, AML, the need for physical signatures to show up in the branch. Also there, I think the trend is very encouraging and compelling. The fact that you can now do these things completely paperless and you can do them branchless and everything is remote, I think in most regions that is already approved, and we have many customers actually doing it right now live. More so, I also think that's where the fintechs actually come to play, because they push the regulators to do it. So I'm less concerned about the regulators, because the challengers, I see them doing this at scale everywhere. So in a sense, they are paving the way, right, in kind of liberalizing the market. I think the challenge more is for the banks to fast follow and be on par or beyond.
I've seen that example. Was it N26? Don't quote me on that. But I'm pretty sure they were the ones who in Germany did the video conferencing as part of the KYC. Yeah. And a lot of the banks thought, oh, we're not sure if this is possible, they'll get in trouble. And then the regulator looked at it and went, well, it's okay. Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden the banks decided to, oh, okay, we can actually open up and do things digitally now.
Absolutely. It's the same thing. It's like glass half empty, half full, right? And this is half full, right? Let's make, what if it happens, right? If it's possible, and it is possible. I think the fintech guys have paved the way. So I think,
nice.
Follow.
And then a final question that we have, at least today, is from Aidan. And Aidan asks, is there an industry standard definition of what are the elements that constitute a banking engagement platform or engagement banking platform? As I can see the definition that we have, but is there a viewpoint that's a bit more general about what elements are used to create this?
Yeah.
Thanks, Aidan.
Well, I think, Aidan, there's no global standard like an ISO certification, but what you see here on the screen, I would say, is an 80% 80-20 rule accuracy. But we can discuss and debate endless what rows and what capabilities. But there's by definition an infrastructure DevOps layer to basically ship code any moment you like, right? So it's the whole DevOps automation part. For sure, there's a security and compliance part, which then also needs to set not only authorization levels, multi-factor authentication, but also entitlements, as you know very well, right? And then, of course, all the identification part as well. So I think you need that, right? Mm-hmm. There's a data strategy for sure, and then all the other layers. So I think this picture here is pretty complete. So for people in the audience, maybe you can use this as a standing point. And this is the Backbase engagement platform. You can also look at other platforms. You can build something yourself. You can also repurpose some of the technologies yourself, and some of these layers are in place already inside the bank. So you don't. So it doesn't have to come from a single platform, although I think it has benefits. You can really kind of compose something like this based on what you have and what you can find in the market.
And at the end of the day, I mean, there's so much. There's a plethora of work out there on not necessarily EBP per se, but also in terms of digital banking platforms, engagement banking platforms, and just the platform economy as a whole. Yeah. Typically Forrester, McKinsey, the Bains, etc. So also to those of you watching at home, we have so many of these reports either directly available on the Backbase website, or you can reach out to our team, and I'm pretty sure that somebody will be able to help you very fast and expediently. I'm looking at the wonderful people behind the cameras here. But I think those are the questions, at least that we have from the audience. I have a question for you, Jaak, which is, what's next?
Yeah, what's next? Let's go there, Cornel. That's a nice transition. We just need to move the slides here a little bit.
Because just while you do that, because we obviously have a whole set of, we have a series coming up, CxO Talks. Yeah. And I think for the first one, we are actually going out of Europe. We're going to the Middle East, if I remember correctly, right?
We're going to go to the Middle East, and that's basically, here we see some beautiful examples, right? So, but we're actually going to go, I will skip all of this, which is very nice, but this is all the impact people can make. We're going to go to the future, and that is about our next guest, which will be on April the 29th. So the whole intent here is that we would like to do this live stream every other 2 weeks, so fortnightly. Okay. We would like to welcome people in the audience, people that are in the Backbase ecosystem, but also thought leaders that are outside of the Backbase ecosystem, people that have a passion for digital transformation. They operate in this EBP market space on how to streamline customer journeys. So everybody's welcome. Just shoot us an email or ping us, Cornel, myself, on LinkedIn, and more than happy to connect. But up and coming, very honored to have Mohammed. Mohammed is the CEO of ILA Bank. And let me just quickly show to the people in the audience, what is ILA? ILA is a greenfield initiative in Bahrain, in the Middle East. It's a traditional bank, Bank ABC, Arabic Banking Corporation, that was very bold and said, we're going to build this new greenfield neo platform in parallel to the traditional bank. So here you see the CEO at the launch. And then fantastic impact, before, after, but 20%, 23% month-over-month customer growth, 300 million deposits in just a couple of months, and 6% lower operating costs compared to the traditional bank. So super impressive results. Yeah, nice. And Basically, Mohammed is going to talk about it like how was it, what's the time to market, what were the mistakes, what were the lessons learned, and it's all the way from customer onboarding. It's a neobank, you need to onboard.
Of course.
It's basically a bank that says enough is enough, nice for Revolut, N26, Chime, etc. We're going to take control of our digital future, and we're going to do something similar on our own. And what is really fantastic, with Ila now up and running in Bahrain, they have a fantastic potential rollout program. You can really easily, with the same platform, multi-country, multilingual, multi-jurisdiction, and you really have something very scalable, just like the challengers.
Yeah, I was going to say, like Revolut. I mean, how many countries are they in now today after just a few short years? It's quite impressive.
But also, if you think about leapfrogging the other challenger banks, like here's the online account opening process, just faster than N26 or faster than Revolut, right? Or on par. So it's also a very nice example that if you take this white label approach and you do adopt, that you can get a lot of these best practices instantly. And you can use it as fighting power in the marketplace.
But I can also imagine that a lot of those lessons learned, Mohammed will share, because ultimately the project life cycle isn't a straight line, right? It's not like you start and you finish. There's normally a few ups and downs. But ultimately, I mean, I'm seeing some very nice reviews up here.
Yeah.
Those lessons learned,
Mohammed is the first to tell us next time about all the pains. I think none of these journeys are victory stories at all. And I think next time, it's going to be straight talk. We're not just going to do the beautiful outcome stuff you normally see. We would really encourage straight talk, like, hey, also, like 3 years ago, where were you? 2 years ago, like what worked, what didn't work? Challenge Backbase, challenge the customer. We're going to have that nice conversation, so the audience hopefully will get some real valuable insights from the trenches.
Yeah, very good. No, but ultimately those dialogues, right? And
look at the results. I mean, it's also nice to celebrate, like after all the hard work and all the all the stuff we had to overcome together, and eventually to see that it is truly possible to make impact like this. I think that's very very rewarding.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm being told it's time.
Yeah, we should time box this out. All right, cool.
No, it's very good. But yeah, so please tune in. April 29th, we will have Mohammed Almiraj joining us as the CEO of Ila Bank to share his story, as well as the story of Ila coming to the market. Jouk, I think from my side, thank you very much for taking the time. It's been wonderful to just have a bit of a chat with you, go through the motions in terms of how can we actually transform and increase the odds of success. Very important questions to ask. To the audience at home, thank you very much for tuning in, asking questions. Always very welcome. And Jouk, I think, if people want to connect, they can hit you up on LinkedIn, I guess. Connect with you directly.
It's connect at Backbase, marketing at Backbase, Jouk at Backbase, or LinkedIn, or Cornell for that matter. We're very open, we're very approachable, would love to engage in a further dialogue. So to everybody in the audience, thank you very much for spending the time with us here today, and look forward to meet you in person in the near future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Banks and credit unions have a problem. Their outdated technology can't keep up. Not with the engaging experiences of big tech and challenger banks, or the speed of new fintech services. And especially not with growing customer expectations. So financial institutions can either lose their customers to better digital players, or they can upgrade. And that's where we come in. The Backbase engagement banking platform is the evolution of the digital banking experience. With the power of one platform, you can start small, then grow big across all channels and business lines. You can increase conversions during onboarding and product applications, deepen customer loyalty and engagement, partner with the finest fintechs, and above all, improve life for customers and also employees. With turnkey apps plus accelerators to build your own, the platform can be tailored to the unique needs of any sized bank or credit union, like the hundreds around the world that we're powering today. This only scratches the surface of what Backbase can do for you. To learn more or speak to us, visit backbase.com.